Hello, welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. The big fluffy bathrobe is probably going to be a fixture for a while I'm losing weight and having a hard time controlling my body temperature. I'm sure I'll find some other fanciful ways to get myself warm during these. There has been some discussion in the blogosphere about one of my favorite things in the world, that being nunchucks. Nunchucks have not come up well in this discussion, and a factor has been missed in the discussion that I thought I might want to bring up. I am kind of a fan of the YouTube channel Shadiversity, and I like Shad for his keen insights in history, and particularly his view on European weapons and armor, castles, and the like. Guy's really encyclopedic when it comes to these things. But he went on a 2-episode rant. It might have been more because I had to stop watching him. He went on a rant about why nunchucks suck. Why nunchucks are, to put it in his words, nothing better than a retarded stick. And in this, he brought up a comparison I don't really consider fair, that being the spear is in every way better than nunchucks. Comparing weapons is a lot like comparing, different superheroes. Yes, I think that Spider-Man could totally beat up Batman. They're two entirely different people with two different power sets, and if Batman had prep time, no, he couldn't. But this led to conversations with friends of mine who also believe the spear is sacrosanct, and the spear is such an elegant, effective weapon concept that it's almost unstoppable. You can't beat someone with a spear. And you can, but we can discuss the qualities of the weapon, what the weapon is meant to be used for, what its purpose in combat, all of which misses something very important. If you are in, say you're a medieval farmer, and the local lord comes riding over the hill one day and says that he is anticipating an attack from a rival, and that attack is no doubt going to come through this village. And we need to stop him at this village. Stop him or slow him down. What that lord was about to do was take you off of your farming duties, regardless of how important the crops are, put a spear in your hand. Give you a spear, take you into the field, show you how to use it, and then stand you up against an army coming in, usually led by horses. And you had even odds of getting out of that. If you had a spear as a medieval peasant coming off the farms to stop an approaching army, you had your best chance. You really did. Why is he giving you a spear? Well, spears are relatively inexpensive. The most work that has to go into a spear is lathing the shaft and blacksmithing a point for the head. Something sharp enough to punch, hopefully, armor. But at the very least, something that you put a sufficient amount of force behind it, you break skin and get as deep as you can. And in a pinch, you don't have to blacksmith the head. You can sharpen the pole, and you've got an effective spear. It is dead simple. You can make a spear out of just about anything. They are fast to produce. They are deadly effective in the right circumstances, and they are easy for most people to use. You can put an armload of them in the arms of your farmers, and you've got a defensive line very quickly. That's the spear. Why is he giving the spears to farmers? Couldn't he give much more effective weapons to, say, blacksmiths? There aren't nearly as many of them, but a blacksmith could theoretically swing a weapon harder and give them maces. Well, you're not going to get as many troops that way. What is it about farming? The reason you're giving spears to farmers is because farmers, at that point in time, what are they growing? Tubers, wheat, usually, mostly wheat. Wheat's an inefficient food source, so you have to grow a lot of it to make up for that. Because that's all going to get, all that wheat seed is going to get pounded down to flour. So you're going to condense that crop into a few pounds, but they're raking. They're using hoes. They're one hand on the back of the handle of their tool, their other hand about 2.5, 3 feet in front of that. And depending on their reach and their grasp, at least a couple of feet. And they're going to be pushing forward from their back foot to get that rake further forward, pulling back, lather, rinse, repeat. And the hoe, same thing. Most of the tools are going to have the same form factor. Go to any garden store, look for the tools that you use to take care of a garden. Most of them have a fairly long handle that you are meant to use two-handed, grip so, lean in, use your body to push. You ever see the Karate Kid? Either of the first ones? Any of the first ones? There's that phrase, wax on, wax off, where Mr. Miyagi teaches Daniel-san to use karate by building muscle memory, by doing menial tasks. Wax the car. You rub the wax on with this hand, you rub the wax off with that hand. Wax on, wax off. He's teaching parries. A medieval farmer in Europe has built the muscle memory for using a spear from countless hours in the field. You hand a spear to your farmers because your farmers already know how to use them, even if they don't know they know how to use them. They have that all-important muscle memory for the spear thrust or the spear stance. All you have to do is take them into a field for a day or so and teach them to raise their aim off the ground. And if you want them to raise their aim off the ground, you'd like them to hit vitals. If they hit feet, that works too. An army marches on those. And if you can cripple a soldier, you can take them off the field. But yeah, you teach them to aim up. You tell them if a horse starts coming in, you brace the back of it against the ground and you hold your line. And if you got one soldier doing that, you might mess up a horse. If you've got 10 farmers doing that, you have messed up the horse. You're probably taking the horse off the field. That is a horse that has to stop. The rider's going to have to wheel around or risk losing his mount. And while they're wheeling around, there's 10 guys with spears right there ready to go for the flank. It is a very small amount of training to convert a farmer of a medieval crop in Europe to a spearman. They're interchangeable, basically. That is the majority of the strength of the spear. It is a weapon you can rapidly equip your population with that your population already knows how to use. You don't have to specially train reserves. You've got fields full of spearmen waiting for a day of training and a spear. You can make it a condition of being a subject of that land that your farmers craft their own spears, that a village has a supply of spears sitting around. Just in case, if you are anticipating that much defense, then you ain't even got to take out spears. They've handled that themselves. Spears are simple, cheap equipment. They're easy to make. Your village blacksmith can knock out a couple of dozen iron spearheads in a few days. And then you got spearheads. It's efficient and simple for so many reasons. The training necessary to defeat one spear in combat, that's a little more complicated. Sword, you can do it with sword and board. If you got a sword and a shield, you can defeat a spear if you are trained to do so. If you've got the muscle memory and the training to spot the weakness in the spear stance, get your shield in the way, and get inside the range of that spear so that you can employ your sword and remove the spearman from play. That is harder to do if there are 5 or 10 spearmen. Much harder to do. Then you're having to deal with an entirely different situation. Is an army going to be stopped by a village full of spearmen? Probably not. An army is going to be slowed by a village of spearmen. The advanced point of the army is going to be slowed. You might take out scouts. You might blunt the first rush. That village is probably doomed if they're not supported, or unless they're large enough. A village of spearmen can win on attrition, and generally will if they've got if it's a big enough village. But your average size village, they're there to slow that army down. Slow it down to buy the Lord time to bolster his defenses or flee. To let him assess the army from a distance, decide whether he wants to engage or not, and see what his best course of action is. You are a unit in a role-playing game. You've been moved into place so that the player can see how long you last. The more wounds you can inflict on that army, even if it's not wounds that will take them out of play yet, you're covered in dirt. You're a medieval peasant. Your spear is probably covered in dirt. The soldiers are covered in dirt. Any wound you inflict with a spear point can turn septic. You can take a soldier off the field days after you poke him because infections are going to happen. But that doesn't help the spearman with a sword in his throat. That's also going to lead to an infection, but that infection is never going to have a chance to kill that spearman, because the sword has already done a plenty fine job. And as I said, there's some qualifiers I keep throwing into this conversation. Medieval in Europe. Now, there's a lot of history that this works in. Anytime you've got the whole village, peasant, farmer, lord structure, when you're dealing with a feudal society, you've got pretty much this. that you can rely on. Now, once firearms come into it, spearmen do not fare well against firearms. Few things fare well against firearms, but the best defense against having firearms is having other firearms. But before you get to that level of technology, spears, pretty good. What if you farm rice? You have problems if you're a rice farmer and there are people coming for you. They don't farm a lot of rice in Europe, so you wouldn't think too much about that if you're considering that field of operations. If you're a rice farmer, you plant by hand. Very few other ways to do that. There is not a tool that's very good for planting rice. You just gotta get out there in the paddy and 2 at a time put your rice seeds down. Get those seedlings in the ground where they can start soaking up all that water, and by the time the paddy floods, they're going to be ready to receive all the nutrients from the water and grow. It's harvest time where you need a tool. Rice, like wheat, very inefficient. You need a lot of it to make a food source. If you're going to be drying it out and using it as your subsistence, if it's going to sustain you through seasons, if you have to give a portion of it to the guy in the big house up on the hill, you have to make a lot of rice, and you have to harvest it pretty quickly. You harvest rice, the paddies get emptied out again, the water gets drained out, and you got to go in and beat the grains out of the leaves. Kinetic force, only way to do it. You got to bash them out, and you've got to do it fast. There's a tool that they use, however, designed specifically for this purpose, that lets you get your stick for beating, get it moving super fast, and so you can control where you're hitting, so you can get all of the grains out. And you need to be using that, well, faster than you can swing a stick. Gotta be. Because you need that much force, and you need to get to a lot of it in a fairly short harvesting season. Well, you do that by taking your stick and putting it on a string. Now you can swing it around faster. And you take the string and you attach it to the end of another stick so that you've got a lever arm to further increase your speed and accuracy. And if you don't want to spend a lot of time juggling which stick is this the handle or is this the one I hit with? What do I got? You make both the sticks the same. You make them both suitable for both as a handle and as a striking surface. Boom! You have an ideal rice flail. The name for this tool is the nunchaku. If you are a rice harvester, if that is what you do on the farm, you go out during harvesting season and as fast as you can, as accurately as you can, you beat the rice grains out of the grass, the leaves, stalks, And you got your fairly large, wide, flat bowls for catching it. You set those down. You beat the living snot out of the rice. Take the grains out. Empty the bowls into the bit larger container. Put them down. Get back out there. If you are, once you have trained, you can't use one hand. Often you'll have two of these things so that you can get the rice on both sides of you. You don't have long, and you've got to get a lot of this. It is almost less efficient than grain farming, but than farming wheat. But you got to do this. Is one of your main food sources. This is going to be the staple for you and the people around you and the people above you forever. You got to get that grain out of that rice. You got to get that back so it can be processed, dried or ground or what have you. It's going to be used for 100 different things. And you got to do it fast. That's some muscle memory. That Asian rice farmer is going to have, although it's not as long of a harvesting period and you're not using tools the entire time throughout the entire process, the time you have out there, you are going hard. And it's difficult work. But when you're good at it, as you have to get good at it, because you've got to get a tremendous amount of this stuff harvested, you're going to have the muscle memory to use a pair of nunchucks. It doesn't take you a full day out in the field to use these as a weapon. You've got really good muscle memory for doing that exactly. Hit that with this, bring this back up to speed. Hit that with this again. Hit that with these, bring both of these back up to speed. Hit that again. Force is equal to mass times acceleration. The mass is important. A spear is heavier than a set of nunchucks. A set of nunchucks is the tip of that striking head is moving much, much faster than a spear. It is going to generate, if not an equivalent force, and it's blunt force. You're talking about blunt force trauma, but you're also talking about opponents who generally aren't wearing very good armor. Well, couldn't you just give them spears anyway? Spears are made of wood in general. You can make them out of bamboo, and bamboo is plentiful, and they did make spears out of wood. Your rice farmers didn't have those muscle memories. And you will use spears in that field of combat. They'll be bamboo spears, which behave differently from wooden spears, much differently. Bamboo is lighter, much lighter. Mass times acceleration. And you can simply make a diagonal cut when you are taking it out of the ground and have a spear. You can have a point on it right there. You can manufacture a point for it. You can... Oh, wait. That would have to be made out of metal, wouldn't it? Metal is hard to come by. Metal is hard to come by there. Metal is so hard to come by that while you have an entire higher class of society that is defined by the blades they wear on their waist, those blades, you have to make those out of metal that other countries would laugh at, that other regions would would wonder why you're even bothering. The process to make a katana is not long and complicated and ritualized because the katana is so special. It's because they're starting with pig iron, and in the sword making process, refining it into finer steel. Not fine steel, finer steel. That's what it takes to make acceptable, decent metal. You're a rice farmer in Japan. If you're a farmer in Japan, you probably have a few wooden tools. They're either cobbled together out of bamboo or they are pretty precious. Remember, their homes are made of wooden frames with their walls made out of paper. Paper made from rice. Rice they can get plenty of if your harvesters are fast enough. Wood is precious. You cannot have someone just produce an armload of spears in a couple of afternoons because that would waste a lot of wood. You make bamboo spears. Those are fine. There's an entirely different way to use them because you cannot generate the same thrusting force. Not without bundling it up and taking extra time and effort, and spears are supposed to be simple. You can put a poor quality metal point on your spear, which will defeat most stuff out there. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to be expensive. It's going to turn your spear that you can get for free into a spear that you're going to have to pass down. Well, at least a spear head is going to have to get passed down to your family. The view that the spear is superior to the nunchuck, it has points of superiority. No pun intended. It's a little Eurocentric to think of it as cleanly superior. You're going to have a hard time putting together a ranks and ranks of spearmen. People using bamboo staffs, yeah, you're going to be able to put together a lot of those. People using sharpened bamboo, you can get that. But if you want someone out there who's generating an awful lot of force on a very precise point, or a number of very precise points on the target, you want someone out there who is capable of not just inflicting a wound or of slowing down an opponent, but of disabling them, you look for the person with the muscle memory of a rice farmer. And you let them use the tool that they use every day. Nothing special required. You don't have to hand them a specialized tool, which a spear kind of is. Now, lots of uses, but all of them are hurting people. The same tool that fed the village, that built the house, or at least the walls of the house, beats up the people supporting the samurai. And sometimes gets a few licks in on the samurai. Is it ideal? No, it's not. But you look at where the use of this tool as a weapon came from, Okinawa, that was a place that was not in an ideal situation. Everything was leveled against them, and they were forbidden from carrying weapons. But they were farmers, so they had to be allowed to use their farming implements. You have to take the situation into account, as well as everything else. Not everybody who picks up a pair of nunchucks is going to study their history or understand the philosophy behind not only the weapon, but why you use it. But in some ways, there's a memory and history to be honored there. And that is every bit as important as knowing the history and means of using the spear. I don't think any weapon is clearly superior to another weapon. They're weapons. For the most part, they are unitaskers. Hurt people. Do damage. Make a hole in something. Or break something apart. Randomize tissue until it stops being functional as the tissue it started as. But you look at the history. You look at the cause and the purpose and how it gets used. You learn something. You learn something picking up a spear. You learn something picking up a bokken or a shinai. You learn something picking up a pair of nunchucks. For free, I'll give you the first lesson you learn when you pick up a pair of nunchucks. Wear a cup. Wear a cup while you're training. And a helmet. Cup and a helmet when you first pick up that pair of nunchucks, swing them around. And the rest of the wisdom will flow from there. Well, thank you very much for this particular rant. I'm feeling a little academic these days. Maybe it's the bathrobe and the demeanor. My thoughts on the subject? I'd be interested in hearing yours. I'm very interested in hearing yours. There's been a lot of discussion on this, and I'm interested in contributing and seeing what your contributions are. Thank you all for the kind words on my last video. I like to keep you all informed, and I appreciate every last bit of support you folks have given me. The kind words and the encouragement, and you just following along. It's an adventure, and let's keep the adventure going, shall we? See what I come up with for next time. This was fun. I'm Scott DeCorum. This is What Has Mattered with Me. I'll see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum. And now, over to Uncle Drac for the outro. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy this video, give it a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If there's any other topics you would like to hear Scott talk about, questions you'd like him to answer, subjects you'd like him to cover, please leave a comment down below. He will love getting your comment, and you will love leaving him one. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, why not? This channel is awesome. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you do, you might also want to hit the little notification bell so you're alerted when these videos become available. If you would like to support this channel in a more substantial manner, we invite you to hit us up at the Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottDeCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows us to create better content more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.